Now, the Prime Minister will hold an emergency call with the leaders of France and Germany today on what Number 10 calls the unspeakable and indefensible humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza.
Well, someone who's seen it firsthand is British surgeon Professor Nick Maynard, who's just returned from his third trip working at Gaza's Nasser Hospital since the end of 2023. Well, Professor Maynard joins us now. Good morning to you. I mean, you know, I can't even imagine what it must be like for you going out there to help and witnessing what you are seeing. We've just seen a snapshot there of everything that's been going on. How is it for you when you've been going out there for so many years, haven't you, and you've seen this situation get worse and worse? How does it feel now as to how grave it is?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going to Gaza for over 15 years now, and each time I go, I think, well, I know what I'm going to find, I know what to expect, but each time, particularly on my 3 visits since October the 7th, 2023, it's been far worse than I could possibly have imagined. And this most recent trip, I only got back 2 days ago. Again, I expected to see horrors. I expected that I'd be prepared for it, but I wasn't. It was beyond description how awful it was.
Professor Madeley, you've just talked about the severe malnutrition. The World Health Organization have called it a man-made malnutrition. Just explain to people what that looks like, what that actually is in reality.
Appalling malnutrition, and that's not just people being very thin. The term skin and bones doesn't remotely do it justice. It also makes them very ill, and particularly in the adults and the children I operated on, some of whom have got very major injuries inflicted by bombs, explosive injuries or gunshot wounds, particularly from the food distribution point. But their ability to recover from those terrible injuries and the surgery that I and others have carried out on them is greatly impaired. So their risk of the internal repairs that I've carried out to the liver, the pancreas, the duodenum, the bowel, the risk of those tissues not healing is very elevated. They leak. The risk of infections and the mortality rate is far, far higher than would be expected.
Which is the shocking thing, isn't it? And you were saying to us that your colleagues that have tried to help, who've tried to take baby formula in, for example, have been prevented from doing so.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time on the paediatric intensive care unit because I had patients there. Appalling malnutrition, and a lot of doctors I know who have taken in formula feed because they knew there was such a shortage. None has been allowed in by the Israelis since the last ceasefire.
So you go through a checkpoint, you get searched as a doctor, and if you've got any baby formula in your pockets or in your bag, they will confiscate it from you?
Very specifically confiscating that. Nothing else. They confiscated every single carton of formula feed that these doctors were taking.
Can you think of any reason other than that they just don't want you to give it to the babies?
We're very cautious in what we take in because we know much will be confiscated, and certainly they always say anything that could be remotely used as a weapon, such as surgical instruments, we can't take in. But I cannot think of any reason why they would confiscate formula feed.
Now, of course, you know, the IDF will claim that their intention is not mass starvation. However, and I want to warn people here, because what we're about to talk about now, which I've already talked about already, is just astonishing. And I don't think doesn't matter which side you're on, even if indeed you are on a side, this particular account of what you've seen about the pattern of injuries, your claims of what you think the IDF soldiers are doing to cause these injuries is alarming. Would you mind explaining that to us?
Yes. I mean, one of the big differences between this most recent trip, these last 4 weeks I've been in Gaza, was the large number of gunshot wounds I've seen. In previous trips, there's predominantly explosive injuries from bombs, but I saw on this occasion multiple gunshot wounds, almost exclusively on young teenage males, some of them as young as 11, 12, 13, 14, all of whom had been shot at the food distribution points, so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation food distribution points. And the pattern of injuries, the stories I was getting from their families, from the patients, and indeed from Gazan healthcare workers who went to these food points to get food for themselves. In between, one anaesthetist used to go between operations to get food. But I saw terrible injuries to the abdomen and the chest, but there was a very clear pattern of injuries, a cluster of injuries to specific body parts on particular days. So one day, for example, we'd see patients coming in with gunshot wounds just to the head and neck. On another day, they'd be coming in with gunshot wounds to the chest or the abdomen. The next day, the legs. On one day, about 12 days ago, we saw 4 young teenage boys, 13, 14, all of whom had been shot specifically in the testicles.
Goodness me.
So the very clear clustering of these injuries appeared to us like a target practice, a game was being played.
So I mean, we should point out, that Israel have said, they don't intentionally shoot civilians. Troops near the aid sites have been firing warning shots. And they say they work to minimise friction between the population and forces as much as possible. It must be so upsetting for you as someone out there trying to help. What do you think it is going to take to improve this situation?
I mean, aid needs to be allowed in, food needs to be allowed in. Our governments need to do more than just give out strong words, which is all they're doing at the moment. They need to take actions. They need to stop supplying arms to Israel. They need to officially recognise the war crimes and the genocide that are being carried out. They need to recognise what the ICJ and the ICC have done in terms of what they have charged Israel with and Netanyahu with. They need to take actions, and they're failing to do so.
Okay. Professor Nick Maynard, the fact that you've been going out there for 15 years tells the story in itself about how long this conflict has been going on. But can I just say on behalf of everybody, and I'm sure everybody would want to say thank you for what you're doing. So what you're doing is so important, and worth reminding us that you go there voluntarily. You have your job as a surgeon at Oxford University Hospital, which you give up for a period of time. Is that right? And you go out there and work voluntarily? Yes,
and many others do the same. I go out with Medical Aid for Palestinians, a wonderful UK-based charity. And yes, they have a large number of people who are willing to volunteer to go out there.
That's putting your own life at risk at the same time.
You plan to go back, Professor?
Yes, I need to negotiate that with my wife, but I will certainly go back at some time.
And do you worry about your own health and well-being and your own life when you're out there?
Yes, I always find that difficult to answer. We all get ill out there. Every single one of us gets ill because the living conditions are pretty awful. And there is no doubt that the security is very, very tough at times. I mean, at one point, we had the Israeli army within a few hundred metres of the hospital,
right,
with bombs and machine gun fights going on. So there's no question security is very tough out there, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Listen, well, thank you so much, not only for, all you're doing, but also for coming here and telling the important stories about what's going on there.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Thank you.